Well, that's going to be our topic today, is talking about core values. And um, I want to catch those I may have missed in the first pass on the attendance. Is Jose Alvarado here? Okay. Jose Fernandez.
Right here, Professor.
Okay, good. Tuba Hassan. Okay. Mariana Martinez. Angela Navarrete. Maricela Oropeza.
Here.
Okay, Maricela, you're right next to me on my screen. Anyhow, I could just look to the left. Jonathan Rapallo.
Right here.
Good. Esmeralda. I think I saw you earlier.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Good. And Veronica.
Right here too.
All right, good. I can just see the top of your head. Good, from the eyebrows up. Okay. Aracelia. Is she
I'm right
here?
here. I'm right
Okay.
here.
All right, good. And then Caesar Soto. And I think I did see you a minute ago. Yeah, I see it in the bottom there. All right, hold on just 1 minute. I've got a problem here. I'm not. I'm going to go right into the presentation today, and this is on core values. This is something that I used to think was just a little add-on for the day, but as time's gone by, I've come to the belief that core values are really essential to the company and maybe one of the most important things that we need to know about strategy. Now we're going to start going up a pyramid of strategy, starting with the foundation and then working its way up. And this is going to take us a couple of weeks to get through, but what we're going to look at is, we'll begin with core values. And as I said, this was something that was kind of a throwaway for me in the early days of my business career. But in the last 8 to 10 years, I really have come to value core values. And as I said, they are foundational. From there, we're going to look and see and define and understand the purpose of a mission. And then as we go up the pyramid, we're going to be looking at the purpose of a vision. Then look to see how goals will help us to manifest the vision that we have in mind. And goals are something that are really long-term, that may take a decade or even an entire generation to achieve. And then at the next level up, we're going to look at objectives. And these objectives are short-term, and each of them, as you assign them and accomplish them, become a part of making your goals become more of a reality. And then finally, at the highest level, even though the course is about strategy, strategy is at the top. And in this case, when I refer to strategy, what I'm talking about is the plans that we execute, or that we document and then execute, to allow us to achieve our objectives, which will move us forward toward achieving our goals, which in turn will help the company reach its vision based on a mission statement that the company has derived. And all of that fundamentally is based on the core values for the corporation. So what we're going to do then today is just look at that first level, which is the core values. And these are really what we believe. And what I'm going to talk about is the core values of a company, but really the core values of you as individuals as part of that company, and me as an individual as well. So the core values may also be called basic beliefs. And what they are is the bedrock that defines what the company is going to look like and how the company is going to act. And as you are moving out of your educational experience here and going into the workplace, this is what this is going to be what you expected the company to look like when you hire on. And as you go through the recruiting process and spend time in an interview, you know that the person that interviews you is going to talk a lot about how the company, what the company's core values are, that they always promote from within, that everyone is treated as part of the family, that they, those are two that always seem to come up, that they always will treat their people in the company fairly. And then when you get into the company, you find that there's no correspondence between what the recruiter said and what you actually observe in the company. And that's one of the things I encourage you to do as you're going through the interview process for a career move, not just to get a job to put food on the table for the time being. Be looking for what you see, how you see things are lived out in the company, and whether the actions of the people coincide with what you've been told are the core values of the company and what you have defined, hopefully today, as your personal core values, because you want to make sure there's a coincidence between what you believe and what the place where you're spending your life, a third of your life, what they believe and what you as part of that group believe. So what you're going to find is that company culture, and this is something that I'm adding here. I'm not sure that I'm 100% correct on this, because usually you see, if you read articles or about either core values or about culture, they never seem to coincide or cross paths together. But I think that culture, which I believe is the living out of the core values, is something that comes out of how people act, and that we should very easily be able to see what we observe, which is the culture. I know that that's a fact, and see that that reflects the values that you and also the company espouse as being important. So what the core values do is tells our community how we do business. I'm a bibliophile. I buy a lot of books. Most of them are antiquarian books. And I was speaking with one of the dealers whom I respect. And he said, and he referred to another dealer, he said, if you're buying anything there, the guy always has problems. He takes what he buys, doubles the price, and then tries to sell it to you at that new high price. So he saw the culture of the second vendor as being entirely different from the kind of values that he had in his company. So what we want to do is so that was what the bad guy company was communicating to the community. This does define what's acceptable personal and corporate behavior. And it's a guide to the decisions and actions of both the individuals and the organization itself. So I guess the next question to ask is, why do we have core values and where do they come from? Now, these are the non-negotiable beliefs, and Peter Drucker would tell us that mission, vision, and strategy all need to be subordinate to core values. So if you are requested to do something that you don't believe that if you're requested to do something because the marketplace has changed and you want to change your mission for the company, if it's going to cause you to have to violate your basic beliefs, put that aside, go back to your basic beliefs and go forward from there. That the basic beliefs will always, or core values will always trump strategy or the mission for the company. So as mission and vision change, and they will, because the marketplace has changed, most every company, and I guess I really shouldn't say large because it affects small companies even more, have had to change their strategy as a result of COVID. And people have come up with a lot of creative solutions, but their core values should remain the same, even though because of circumstances in the marketplace, everything else has changed. Well, let me tell you what I did, because I've been in business now for 34, 54, 55 years. And I always have had core values in the companies where I worked. And many of those companies were ones that I started up as well. So as you know, I started at IBM. And from that experience, I learned of I'm going to call it at this point, the prevalence of core values in their activity. I had not really signed on to understanding exactly how important they were to the company at that time. But what I did whenever I set up another company, and over the course of the time I was in business, I probably participated in about the startups for about 10 companies. I always established core values for the companies I started. I gave them lip service and I applied them to my behavior. These were things that I truly believed. And therefore, that was how I conducted myself in the marketplace. But because I didn't communicate them, I didn't write them down someplace, I didn't train people to honor those values, they didn't have any effect on anyone else. So let me tell you what, and essentially what I did is I took IBM's core values, or what they call their basic beliefs, and I applied those to my new business. And those were, I'm going to move this back because I want to tell you that 55 years ago, when I first was exposed to this, when I walked through the door at the IBM office, the first thing they did was to give me a business card with the basic beliefs on the back of it. And then they stamped those on my brain so I can tell you what they are: respect for the individual, approach every problem as though it can be solved in a superior manner, and give the best customer service in the world. And so even 55 years later, I can still quote those to you. And they became very significant in my life. But I, when I applied them to my own companies in the next go round, all I did was a copy and paste. And I really didn't think about them before I adopted them. And that's surprising, because if there's one word that applied to IBM, it was think. And that meant doing what I want you to do with the critical thinking, to not only have quick answers, but also have the reason or the rationale behind the answer. So IBM's core values were not that company's core values. They were the values of the people who made up the company. Now, well, how does this happen? Why would that be the case? If I were president of a new company and we're hiring you in, I might give you my set of core values for the company. And because you want the job, you'd say, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree with those. Those are the way I'll conduct my life. But what we're looking for as a hirer, if I were doing the hiring, I'd be looking for people who could articulate those core values without me telling them the company's values to that individual. And that's how IBM started. The guy who started the company was a man named Thomas Watson. And he'd been a salesman for a company called NCR, National Cash Register. And he was hired into the company that was called International Business Machines. In fact, that he made the name for that company when he was hired on. It was a combination of 3 different companies. And right from the beginning, he set out the core values or basic beliefs for the company. And he made sure that everyone who hired in was hired on the basis of their believing in and acting out those values. And if they didn't, if their values were different, they would very quickly either not be hired in the first place or would be encouraged to go elsewhere where they would be able to be more successful. So the values from the onset became part of became the values of the people that were working there. And as time went on, they hired more people who believed the same way, believed the same beliefs. Now, I'm not talking about brainwashing you, although, as I said, they imprinted that set of values on my brain. This is not something that you're forced to do. It's something that if you're a qualified candidate and we want to have you join the company, and you also have those key values, that's a good match. And if you don't, then we shouldn't be talking any further. But enough about you. How do you want to be known? What values do you think are important in conducting your life? And how do you want others to see you? What do you want to see on your epitaph? And I'm going to stop this right now and let you respond to that with some of the values you might have.
Do you want us to just share?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you get. That's what you get the grades for doing.
Okay. Well, one that I really want to stress on is I used to sell life insurance. So whenever I'd go to current customers' houses to like talk about the policies they have and things of that matter, I noticed that a lot of the times the sales agent would just try to get the bigger buck, meaning like they would sell them things that they didn't want or necessarily things that they didn't know they had. So one major core value that I think is extremely important is trustworthiness. The customer trusts you to take care of their business. That's why you're there. That's why you're there providing a product or a service. And if you manipulate that or take advantage of it, it could backfire really bad and then just show a bad brand image.
Sometimes John Rapallo, sometimes you can get away with that in the short term, but in the long term, people figure you out. Just like I told you about that one company that's got a reputation, and he has a lot of stuff I'd like to buy, but I'm not going to go there because the reputation has spoiled him. And someone else started to say something there. Was that you, Nago?
No, but or maybe.
But you will, huh?
Yeah, I will. I had written this down last class, but and it's so funny that you were talking about IBM's core values, the respect the individual. Same with them. Respect everybody and treat the janitor to the CEO or the CFO the same way. Just respect everybody.
That is so important. In fact, I've heard of teachers that have put on the classes for a period of time, and then the exam question was, can you name the person that cleans this room? It's somebody that you run into all the time. And frankly, I know when I'm in school, I don't know whether how many of you actually have been in the school, but I was there for a number of years, and there's a terribly sweet lady in there who does take care of everything, and she always calls me, "Hello, Professor." And though it's been several years, I don't know her name, and that's not good. That's not good. It is respect for the individual, and each of us has um, each of us is special in some special way, and we have to be, we have to acknowledge that. That's particularly, Nago, as you're going to move up the ladder and take a position where you will have subordinates. They have to know they're special.
Yes, yeah, because like the company I know, or I hear the company I work for now, I know the president, and I know the cleaning lady that cleans where I work. So it's like, I say, well, obviously I don't say hi to the president, only when he comes and visits, but I say hi to the cleaning lady. I know her name. So
That's great. You're on the right path. And I'll tell you, if you come into my office, if I'm in, and I am in an authority position because, everyone wants to call me professor, but I don't want to be called that. But that door's always going to be open, and I'll drop everything that I'm doing unless it's super critical that I get it done, and I'll spend whatever time you need with you. Because each of you students is important to me. And that's why I call you my kids.
Even I was gonna add to specifically what Rapala was saying, that kind of like abuse of knowledge almost. Like a personal core value like that I've tried to withhold within all my years of sales is transparency. And the reason why I choose the word transparency is because a good salesperson, how they say you can sell water to a well, or ice to a freezer, or fryer in hell kind of thing. Like if you can technically sell anything, it's about selling them what they need and not to fulfill their needs and not to only fulfill yours and what you need. So I've told customers, while it is a kind of a bold statement, if they're on the fence of something, I always say, I'm not going to sell you something that you don't want for you to only return it in a couple of days. So like being transparent about certain attributes of whatever you're selling is, I think, just really important, as opposed to like abusing it and withholding information and just being like, oh yeah, this is good for you, or something that's not really going to come to any mass of benefit to your customer or your client. Like I think that transparency is really crucial to basically allow them to know what is key in developing and maintaining any kind of business relationship or client to business relationship. So
And it goes beyond business relationships. It's interpersonal relationships with other people that people expect you to be transparent.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anyone else want to give a couple thoughts here?
I have one. It's following through, always keeping your word.
Ah.
I find that's a huge issue at my workplace with my particular general manager. I'm an assistant manager to him, but he always says stuff like, okay, I'm going to follow this. I'm going to get rid of this employee, or even like, I'm going to order this particular product. And then he doesn't do it. It drives me nuts. And then it kind of, falls down to the other team members. They're like, why wasn't this ordered? Or he said he was going to do it, and it kind of just aggravates me, and then it trickles down to everyone else. So that's one of my major values, is always follow through and always keep my word. Even if it's small, big, small to big, always.
Yeah, and I get tripped up on that. I believe very strongly what you're saying, Taylor, but I suspect some people in this classroom right now could point fingers at me because I haven't accomplished some of the things that I indicated I would. It isn't for lack of trying, but I run into technological problems.
Yeah, but that's okay. That happens. It's okay.
You're just super kind. That's all. Let me mark you down, give you a plus for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll go. So
Okay, Jose.
one of the core values for me would be accountability, because I feel like everyone wants to take credit when everything is going good, But what about when things are going bad? Nobody wants to show their face then. And it's just not in business, but also in life. When things are going, not the way you want to, you have to hold yourself accountable. And it's, take take the situation in your hands and stop blaming other people for things that are not going as well.
Yeah, you'll be respected for it. You'll be respected, and there's going to be times when you will have embarrassed yourself because of something that you've done, and you got to own up to it. Hey, I made the mistake. Forgive me. I'll try better next time. Okay, well, we'll go back in and take we'll go a little further with this. I know where I got to go. All right, so the real source of the core values for a corporation are you. It's what each of you believes, and the strength that we have in all towing the line, following the same set of ground rules, corporate ground rules. And as you impute your personal values to the company, they become the source of the company's value. And they're going to last a lot longer than you will. Well, as I was preparing for this today, I went out and looked for a copy of a book that I was given when I joined IBM. And this is it. And there is at least one copy in hardback at a relatively cheap price on Amazon right now, this morning, unless somebody bought it in the last 45 minutes. This is called A Business and Its Beliefs, and it was written not by Thomas Watson that I spoke about, but by his son, Thomas Watson Jr. And obviously, growing up in Thomas Watson's house, Thomas Watson Jr. had all of the same kind of values and beliefs that his dad did. And so what he did when he was promoted to president of the company, his dad served as president for probably 20 years. When he succeeded his father, he wrote this book. And what it does is take each of those basic beliefs that they have: respect for the individual, approach every problem as though it could be solved in a superior manner, and give the best customer service in the world, and build a chapter around that in his book. And we were required to reread that every year and sign a document that we'd done so, because they really did believe in us having those values as the thing that drove our behavior in the marketplace. So as what happens is, as a company officer or a manager, as you build your team, what you're going to do is look for people that share those same values. It just makes sense. So let's go back now to IBM's values. As I said, respect for the individual, approach every task as though it can be accomplished in a superior manner, give the best customer service in the world. This was a mantra for 80 years. And it was something that was one of the fixed points in my business universe, that I always would be dependable. It would always be dependable belief on my part that IBM would honor those basic core values. But then in 2003, and I put a copy of this particular thing on information under your in Blackboard, so you can pull down a copy of the document I'm going to talk about. After 100 years, in 2003, IBM went back and rewrote the core values that they had for the corporation. As I said, this really shattered my world, because I knew that that was one of the unchanging good things in business. And the president at that time was a man named Sam Palisano, and IBM really had kind of was beginning to lose its mojo. And so he did this. I don't know that I would have done it had I been in its position, but I think it was something that was well done. What they did is they put out a 72-hour values jam. That's what they called it. And they put it on their intranet, the internal email system, giving the 250,000 people that worked for the company a chance to input a new list of core values or a new list of basic beliefs for the corporation. And he wanted to shake things up because I said they were kind of losing their mojo. So this might be a way to get people to really think about what was important for them at the company. And when it got all done, this is what their values were. And when you pull up that particular document, you can see that not only did it list their new core values, but it also gave the rationale behind them. And that's important too. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. Their new values were a dedication to every client's success, innovation that matters for our company and for the world, and trust and personal responsibility in all relationships. Well, when I look at that closely, I see dedication to every client's success as being the same as giving the best customer service in the world, with different words. Innovation that matters for our company and for the world sounds an awful lot like approach every problem as though it can be solved in a superior manner. And trust and personal responsibility in all relationships sounds an awful lot like respect for the individual. Now, they're in the opposite order as they had been previously. But essentially what happened is they gave the same, reworded a little bit, but essentially the same values that had driven the company for almost a century. And why were they able to do that? Really put out the request for everybody to give their contribution and be willing to accept that contribution no matter what? Because those 270,000 people had all gone through the same hiring process. And one of the criteria for them getting a position at IBM was their dedication to these basic beliefs. And so in a way, it was a way to reinforce or remind people in a very real way of what the business was all about. And at the same time, it was relatively low risk because they understood the people that work there. And so it became very important. Well, another company that goes along on the same way, and for years, if you were to name the two most significant companies in information processing, we called it data processing back in the day. The other one would be IBM and the other one would be HP or Hewlett Packard. Now, Hewlett Packard's gone through a number of things in the last decade or so, but these are their core values: trust and respect for individuals, achievement and contribution, results through teamwork, meaningful innovation, and uncompromising integrity. And you may say, well, you know, how did they get it? How did they come about those values? Did they copy IBM's or anything of that sort? This is a picture of Ground Zero for Silicon Valley. It's in Palo Alto, and it's the original garage that Bill Hewlett and David Packard started their company in. It's a shrine now. These guys were brilliant. But you know, what they did was they started before they even knew what product they were going to make. And this is back in the 1930s, late 1930s. They established their basic beliefs before they began production. And you can go out and look under HP Way on the internet and you'll find a lot of information about how this all came about. But it became the driving force for the way that company runs their business. And this would be true for other really good companies that we could highlight. Well, what does an existing company do to create core values when nobody's ever written them down? Well, to begin with, the core values are always there. They may not have been articulated, but every company has them and every individual within a company has them. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you kind of wrestle with it, is to find out or write down the things that really are motivating you and that show how you act and live your life. Well, a guy I know had a company. It was about 50 years old. He'd inherited it from his parents, and he had been president of the company for about 20 years. And he said, it's time for us to write down our core values. And so this is how he went about it. And I think it's a very good way. If you don't have core values in your organization, he got all of his key managers together to participate in this process. And he had them brainstorm. What are you asking each of those managers? What do you believe the values should be? And with an intent, incidentally, of honoring what his subordinates stated were their beliefs. And so what they did is, having brainstormed for a while, they had post-it notes all over the wall in their conference room. What they did was they wrestled through prioritizing the list with what his expectation was they'd end up with about 3 to 5 values. He didn't feel any sense of risk about this because, again, his subordinates and himself had been living for 20 years under a set of values that had never been written down, but they were the same, or those people wouldn't have been there at that company after that many years. So they worked it down, and they got down to 8 in that particular meeting. And he sent everybody home, and he said, come back next week. Because he didn't want to have 8, but he didn't want to tell them, I want 3 to 5. Let them kind of stew on it for a week. And when they came back, what they did is select it down into about 5 values that were important. And then they wordsmithed it into simple, memorable statements so that everyone would understand what they're talking about. And it would be supported, incidentally, just as IBM's were, with a paragraph or so explaining what each of those statements, those brief statements, really meant. Then the next step he went through is to have every manager rate himself. Do you believe this? You know, we've had this conversation, and with 7 or 8 people at the table, you might have been 2/3 of the way there, but there might be a couple that you didn't really accept. Are you on board with these beliefs? And if you aren't, could you see yourself making changes in your behavior to make them your belief? And that's sometimes tough to do. And then he reminded them that measurable adherence to the beliefs will be part of your performance plan, which in turn is the thing on which you get paid, or at least get promoted, is how well you are in line with the company's activity. And what would happen, as he predicted what would happen if you were unable or unwilling to adapt to these values, you're going to find that you're kind of the odd man out, and without anybody telling you, don't let the door hit you in the backside on the way out, you will end up leaving the company because you'll be aware of the how uncomfortable it is to be there. The end of the day, what you want to do is get all hands rowing in the same direction. And it's a beautiful thing when that happens. And when it doesn't happen, you end up with something like this. Then he went through the process of implementing the core values as a mantra for the company. And what I would suggest that he did, what I suggested that he do, is to get a poster with the core values and put it every place where people might be. Put one behind his desk in his president's office, put one in the lunchroom, breakout room. If they've got a locker room, and I don't know whether they did or not, where people could change clothes when they went from work clothes to their home clothes, have a poster in there, put one in the lobby so that people from the outside can see what your beliefs are. Then get a copy to every team member. And that would be the value plus the description. And I'd put it in their pay envelope. And so that the explanation would be in there as well. Then every time you have a meeting, a management meeting, have somebody review one of the basic beliefs and how it applies to their activity in whatever management department they're in. This is kind of like an AA meeting, where you pick one of the 12 steps and somebody describes that step and what it means in their life, and then they give their personal testimony. And the same thing here, where this is constantly reviewed and reiterated so that it becomes part of the way you run your business. Then live out the values every day, and that'll happen over time. And get a buy-in from everybody, every team member in the company. Now, how do you use these on a day-to-day basis within your company? In selecting new hires, you would probably show them the basic beliefs. You would try and elicit that from the interview process, actually, hopefully getting the individual statement of what their beliefs are before you expose what the beliefs are, because you don't want people saying whatever it takes, I'm willing to do it to get the job. It's a framework for disciplining and directing coworkers, because you've got you can call people out in a nice way if they're not following the basic beliefs, and remind them this is the way we conduct our business here. And then it also provides an objective way to get people to leave. Now, my first time I ever had to fire somebody, a fellow was performing poorly. Everyone else knew it, and so I finally arrived at the decision to let him go. And I called him into my office. I said, "Come on in, I want to talk to you." And he came in and closed the door behind him. And he said, "Well, I've been wanting to talk to you too. You're the nicest boss I ever worked for." Well, that isn't the way to start an exercise in letting some person go from their job, separating them from their job. But he then continued on, and he said, I have not really been happy here, and I have accepted a position elsewhere, but I really want to tell you how much I appreciated being able to work here. Well, I almost did a standing broad jump across the desk to shake his hand and wish him well, because it was a terribly difficult situation. Had it that he just stopped with, "You're the nicest person I ever worked with." But what I learned was having something like these core values gave me an objective way to bring up the topic well before the time that he's ready to be let go, to give him a chance to improve his behavior. So this is would have really helped me a lot. Now, we want to make sure that our customers understand what our values are. And Rapallo, as you were saying, if you got a situation where you're trying to sit down and sell somebody life insurance, the company wants to know, your prime company wants to know that you're representing them in a way that's consistent with their corporate values. And we should be able to go to customers and see, what do you think of the way we run our business? How would you describe our core values? So you want to ask them and survey them and make it clear as to who you really are and what you are as a company. Now, core values are an inside out view of the company. This is where you tell the company, you tell the customer, this is who we are. Here's why you should buy from us, because this is how we conduct ourselves in business. And what we're going to see later on when we look at mission statement, that's an outside in kind of a thing, where the customer tells you what they think is going on in your company. But for right now, what it is an inside out. So I want to show an example of this. I'm going to use a little film clip from the movie 42, and this is about Jackie Robinson. And back in 1947, there were no Negro ball players playing professional baseball. There were some wonderful athletes, and they were playing in the Negro leagues, but they couldn't get up to the big leagues, even though they could easily have knocked a number of their white counterparts out of the position. And one man decided he wanted to begin to integrate baseball, and he needed to pick somebody who could do that. And so he selected Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson is from LA. He went to Pasadena City College, and then for his junior and senior year, he went to UCLA. He was a four-letter man. He played football, basketball, track, and baseball, but his weakest sport was baseball. And he became one of the greatest ball players of all time. He was put in a position where all the way through the first season, wherever they went, the fans were nasty to him. The opposing players would hurl all kinds of invectives against him. And even his own teammates would never cut him a break. Now, this is a period, a time in this movie in 1947, I think it was in August of 47, in my hometown. That's the Cincinnati Stadium that was there in 1947. I spent a lot of time when I was a kid there in the early 1950s. And it was the same in the 50s as it is in this picture. And the person on the left is Pee Wee Reese. He was a shortstop. And this is the point where he demonstrates what his core values are with relationship to Jackie Robinson.
They can say all they want. We're just here to play ball.
It's just a bunch of crackpots still fighting the Civil War.
Well, hell, we'd have won that son of a gun if the cornstalks would have held out. We just ran out of ammunition.
Better luck next time, Pee Wee.
Ain't gonna be a next time, Jackie. All we got's right here. Thank you, Jackie.
What are you thanking me for?
I got family up there from Louisville. I need them to know. I need them to know who I am.
Hey, number one! You playing ball or socializing?
Playing ball, up.
Come on! Don't let us get to you!
Playing ball. Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42. That way they won't tell us apart.
Well, indeed, today they do all wear 42. There's one game at the beginning of every season where every player on every team has 42 on their jersey to remember his becoming the great one that he was, and for what he contributed to the sport by integrating it successfully. He was picked because he was a hothead, but he also was a person who could control his temper. And that was the way that was why he was so successful with the integration. And of course, he was also successful because he was a marvelous athlete. So if you haven't seen the movie, go get a copy of it. It's about 5 years old, but it's a wonderful story. So Peter Drucker says this about the core values. He said, core values, when he compares core values and strategic planning, he says that always trumps strategy. And if there's any time that your strategy, which will change over time, conflicts with the core values, always recenter on the core values, because they're more important in the long term for the company. So that's what I wanted to show you. And if you can get those core values in, I gave you an extra day to write them down, because I was stumbling around so badly trying to get the simplest of all the things to do, how to submit a document. So that's it, and I'll see you next time.
Wait, so now there's a link where we could submit it?
Yeah, it should work. It sure,
Okay.
and please tell me if it doesn't work. But
Okay.
I work with the people in the IT office to make sure it did work.
It
Okay.
worked